You know, my life has been pretty great ever since I broke that witch's curse. Disney movies and racism have historically gone together like bronies and child sex trafficking, but honestly, Peter Pan is just trying to see what it can get away with. Almost the entire first half of the film is taken up by an extended series of racist jokes that culminate in an extended musical number of... oh, dear fucking lord. You know, for a lot of these more problematic movies, I've been going back to watch Doug Walker's Disney-cember series on each of these movies, and there's a trend where something so absurdly racist that it gets criticism decades later comes on screen, and Doug goes, "I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was cool." And just... man, that really encapsulates everything wrong with this bearded hack. What Made the Red Man Red is still a song that makes me angry every time I hear it, and I'm still to this day furious that Josh had the gall to put it at the end of that one video we did together. I bet if he had Sketchy on, he would be seriously considering how to sneak an N-word into the video. But enough talking about sad little boys who don't want to grow up, let's talk about Peter Pan. Peter Pan is an okay movie. It was never anything groundbreaking and just kind of sailed along. It was the Wreck-It Ralph of its day. Peter himself is a perpetually adolescent child with a really big bug up his ass about women, and most of the story perpetually involves him getting the shit kicked out of him for it. Honestly though, Tinkerbell's the really weird part of the movie. I'd seen this movie when I was a kid, but it only just occurred to me how aggressively sexualized she is. I've seen female characters be treated like window dressing, but Tinkerbell is just the most. It's kind of creepy. I know I've said this a dozen times already, but Walt, what's wrong with you? I mean, I know you can't answer me because you're dead, but what's wrong with you? Speaking of which, I knew the movie had a really racist segment in it regarding the native tribe, but... okay, usually Disney racism can be powered through because it's only a small piece of the film, but this takes up almost half the movie. Between everyone chanting, "We're off to fight the Injuns," and the constant racist remarks being made the whole way, to Captain Hook saying "Redskin," and then the musical number that implies native people are red because they're perpetually blushing and insisting that it's true no matter what is written or said, and I just... Walt, what's wrong with you? I've said this twice in one roundup. Just what's wrong with you? The amount of racism in Disney movies is almost comical in its absurdity, and it baffles me how extreme it gets sometimes. There are times where Disney movies feel like they were actually made by the mutant offspring of H.P. Lovecraft and Rebecca Sugar, and people always come back at me with, "but he was a product of his time." But even back then, there were rumors of him being a Nazi sympathizer. Peter Pan desperately needs a re-edit, one that takes out all the dumb shit with the natives and replaces it with, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, gay princesses? This is another movie that hasn't aged well, but in a different way. Back then, a tramp was another word for a hobo, and these days a tramp is, well, me. While I absolutely love Lady and the Tramp, for some reason I can't watch more than 20 minutes of it at a time. This was the longest in a minute to write, and it threw my entire schedule out of sync as a result. Maybe it's the result of the almost episodic way the movie's written, but I think it has more to do with the really soft way the line delivery is made, along with how everything moves just a bit too slowly, and it just kind of lulls you to sleep. I've been getting that feeling with a lot of older Disney movies, even the ones that are actually pretty good, in that you kind of get lulled into a hypnotic state while watching it. Maybe that's why they're so overwhelmingly praised despite just being kind of boring. It's kind of like watching Peppa Pig compilations for hours, you know, assuming nobody's spliced that mutant offspring of Slender Man and overly attached girlfriend into it like a prick. That having been said, I do really like this movie. It's got the cute puppers in it. What's not to love? The only thing that could possibly make it more fun is gay princesses. Oh my god, this movie's so fucking boring. Sleeping Beauty is the absolute nadir of old school Disney. It's slow, it's hypnotic, it's dull. Every character is a dull cardboard cutout, and more time is spent making really long dramatic shots than doing anything entertaining. It feels like a Fantasia piece where the music was given more importance than the actual story. In fact, the story is so watered down and scrubbed clean from its original fairy tale, you wonder why Walt even bothered trying with this one. There's an irony with Sleeping Beauty in that every time Disney has revisited it, it turned out to be better than the original animated film. The film's appearance in Birth by Sleep was dramatically improved with the addition of Blueberry Lesbian doing all the heavy lifting for Prince Philip because he's a weak-ass trubbish shit, and the live-action remake Maleficent completely rewrote the entire story to have more badass mom energy and turning the curse scene from a dull affair into the most satisfying series of vindictive grins ever put on screen. I love this movie. It's trash, but it's my trash. The animated version is even more trash, but not nearly as fun or satisfying. While Maleficent herself is often considered the highlight of the entire film, that's only because everyone else is so dull and bland that she's the only thing that really stands out. She only has maybe one or two really good scenes, and beyond that, she really does just blend into the scenery. We're still in that era of Disney where the movie doesn't have to be good, it just has to be pretty, and it's usually the non-fairy tale movies that tend to do better because they have to have some semblance of a story involved. It's strange how in the modern era this has reversed itself, where the Disney princess movies are the really strong films, while the non-princess films are more throwaway and less enjoyable. You know, except Zootopia. I don't know. Sleeping Beauty needed something more engaging to really liven up the place. Like gay princesses. 101 Dalmatians is kinda boring. This is the start of the Xerox era of Disney, where all the animation was done via photocopier, and it wasn't just the animation that changed. A lot of these movies have a really whispery sort of line reading, where everything just sounds soft and dulled out, which really makes a lot of the movies a snorefest to watch. This is something about the Xerox era I find a lot of people don't talk about. The sound design makes these movies harder to watch than the animation ever would. I actually think the Xerox animation looks fine. It's like an old storybook came to life, and it's a pretty cool effect. I tend to be in the minority in that really impressive animation isn't my priority with animated films. It's the writing. The writing was what killed 2D animation in recent years after all. But 101 Dalmatians is just kind of a slog. The movie itself has too slow of a pacing, and it takes a lot for anything particularly interesting to happen. And the previously mentioned sound design means that even otherwise critical scenes tend to be drab and dull as everyone whispers their lines like they're trying not to wake their parents. And that's a shame because a lot of these moments are really good, but they require a rewind almost every time because they're such a chore to listen to. Weirdly enough, despite the majority of the film being really tedious and boring, the last third where Pongo and Perdita are bringing their puppies home is genuinely some of the most tense and enjoyable filmmaking I've seen so far. From hiking in the blizzard to taking refuge through the night to the stealth mission in town to the chase at the end, it all had me on the edge of my seat, and I don't usually get that excited for anything except gay princesses. Next month is a bunch of furry bait.